All right, folks, let's talk about something close to my heart. Africa. You might remember when former President Trump decided to slash US foreign aid, that money was kind of important for a lot of people, especially in Africa. Those aid dollars weren't just building wells, they were fueling a booming startup scene. Fintech, agri-tech, healthcare African entrepreneurs were innovating like crazy. But then Trump came in and suddenly those startups were left scrambling. His decision definitely threw a wrench in the works. The question is, did it break the system or force it to become stronger? So buckle up, because we're about to dive deep into the world of African startups post-Trumpian aid cuts. Picture this, you're a young entrepreneur in Lagos, Nairobi or Cape Town. You're full of ambition, creativity and a vision to change the world. You've spent countless hours developing your idea, refining your business plan and maybe even building a prototype. You've got this killer idea, an app that connects farmers with buyers, a mobile banking platform for the unbanked. Your solution could revolutionize industries, create jobs and improve lives. Before the Trump era, organizations like USAID were like the fairy godmothers of African startups. They provided not just funding, but also mentorship, networking opportunities, and a stamp of credibility. They were handing out grants, seed funding, and all sorts of support. This backing was crucial for turning dreams into reality. But then, poof! The magic money disappeared. The funding streams dried up almost overnight. Those early-stage ventures were suddenly left high and dry. The dreams that once seemed within reach now felt distant and unattainable. These startups needed time, support, and consistent funding to navigate the challenging landscape of entrepreneurship in Africa. They needed a safety net to fall back on during tough times. The aid cuts created uncertainty, disrupted momentum, and forced many promising ventures to either scale down, shut down, or spend more time chasing investors. The landscape became more competitive and unforgiving. But as we'll see, it also forced a major rethink of how African startups could access funding and build sustainable businesses. It sparked innovation in funding models and a new wave of resilience among entrepreneurs. Money isn't everything in the startup world. You also need guidance, mentorship, and a network of like-minded hustlers. Initiatives like the Young African Leaders Initiative, YALI, and the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, GES, were crucial. These programs, often funded by the US government, were like crash courses in entrepreneurship. They brought together bright young minds from across Africa, connected them with mentors and investors. But when the aid cuts hit, these programs felt the squeeze. Some were scaled back, others lost funding altogether. African entrepreneurs are resourceful. They found ways to connect, learn, and grow. But there's no denying that the reduction in US-backed support created a gap. Sometimes you got to learn to play the game on hard mode to truly master it. Let's talk about the heart and soul of many African startups' social enterprises. These are businesses that aren't just about making a profit, they're about solving real problems. Startups tackling healthcare access, education inequality, renewable energy, and sustainable agriculture. When the US started pulling back on aid, many of these social enterprises found themselves in a precarious position. Suddenly, impact wasn't enough. Investors wanted to see a clear path to profitability. It was a harsh reality check for many social entrepreneurs. This isn't to say that social enterprises were doomed, but it forced them to become more financially savvy and to develop sustainable revenue models. It was a tough lesson, but one that ultimately strengthened the sector. The US is pulling back on aid, but the story doesn't end there. This shift has left a significant gap in the global aid landscape, prompting other nations to step in and fill the void. The question now is, who will take the lead in this new era of international assistance? Enter China with its Belt and Road Initiative and a whole lot of cash. China has been quick to seize the opportunity, investing heavily in infrastructure and development projects across the African continent. China's involvement in Africa is a whole other conversation, but they saw an opportunity. They have been forging strong ties with African nations, offering loans and investments that come with their own set of strings attached. The European Union also stepped up its engagement with African startups. They have been providing funding and support to foster innovation and entrepreneurship. aiming to create sustainable economic growth. The Gulf states, particularly the UAE, saw Africa as a ripe market for investment. They have been channeling significant resources into various sectors, from real estate to technology, hoping to secure a foothold in the burgeoning African market. This influx of new players created both opportunities and challenges for African startups. On one hand, it meant more potential investors and more access to capital, which is crucial for growth and development. It meant more potential investors and more access to capital. However, it also brought about increased competition and the need for startups to navigate complex international relationships. But it also raised concerns about debt traps and neo-colonialism. Many worry that these investments come with hidden costs, potentially leading to a new form of economic dependency. The US withdrawal created a void quickly filled by other actors, each with their own agendas. These new dynamics are reshaping the landscape of international aid and investment in Africa. And that, my friends, is a whole other can of worms. The future of Africa's development is now being influenced by a diverse array of global players, each bringing their own set of challenges and opportunities. Africa to the rescue, the rise of intra-African investment. African nations started investing more in homegrown talent. Governments launched initiatives to support entrepreneurship and created funding mechanisms for small businesses. High-net-worth individuals and traditional businesses in Africa started to see the value of investing in startups. This rise of intra-African investment was a game changer. It wasn't just about the money, it was about fostering a sense of ownership. Initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, further fueled this trend. This made it easier for African startups to scale their businesses and reach new customers. It was a powerful shift, a recognition that Africa had the talent and resources to build its own future. And that, my friends, is a beautiful thing. Bootstrapping and hustling. The rise of local venture capital. Before the Trump-induced aid cuts, many African startups relied heavily on foreign VC firms for their funding needs. These international investors were often the lifeline for budding entrepreneurs looking to scale their businesses. However, these firms often prioritized businesses that aligned strictly with their own investment thesis, sometimes overlooking the unique potential of local ventures. The funding crunch that followed forced African entrepreneurs to look closer to home for capital, sparking a new wave of local venture capital initiatives. Local VC firms, often founded and run by Africans, had a deeper understanding of the nuances and challenges of the local market. They were more attuned to the specific needs and potential of African startups. These local investors weren't afraid to invest in sectors that foreign VCs might shy away from, such as agriculture, education, and healthcare. They provided patient capital, recognizing that building successful businesses in Africa takes time and resilience. This patient approach was crucial for sustainable growth. This rise of local VC wasn't just about filling a funding gap. It was about shifting the power dynamics in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. It was about ensuring that African entrepreneurs had access to capital from investors who truly understood their vision and were committed to their long-term success. Beyond the West Africa's global partnerships diversify. The story of Africa's global partnerships goes beyond just China and the European Union. The UAE has emerged as a major investor in African startups. They've set up investment funds, launched incubator programs, and established a presence in key African tech hubs. The UAE sees Africa as a valuable partner in innovation. Then there's India, another emerging economic powerhouse with a growing interest in Africa. Indian companies have been investing in African startups and forging partnerships. This diversification of global partnerships is crucial for African startups. It reduces their reliance on any single partner and allows them to tap into a wider pool of expertise and resources. Necessity breeds innovation, the fintech boom. Africa, with its large unbanked population and mobile-first culture, was already a hotbed for financial technology innovation. The funding crunch accelerated the growth of fintech startups across the continent. Everyone was developing mobile money solutions, digital banking platforms, and blockchain-based payment systems. These innovations were tailored to the unique needs of the African market. They provided financial access to the unbanked and facilitated cross-border payments. This fintech boom wasn't just good for the startups, it was good for the entire African economy. It promoted financial inclusion, boosted economic activity, and created jobs. Building to last. The shift to sustainable business models. Before the funding crunch, there was a tendency to focus on short-term growth and quick exits, but building lasting businesses requires a different approach. It requires a focus on profitability and creating real value for customers. The United States aid cuts forced many African startups to confront this reality. They had to get leaner and more focused on building businesses that could stand on their own. Sustainable businesses are the ones that will ultimately transform Africa's economies, and that, in the long run, might be the most valuable lesson of all. The future of African startups, a new dawn. The United States aid cuts forced a major reset in the African startup ecosystem. They exposed vulnerabilities but also unleashed a wave of innovation and resilience. The challenges remain, of course. Access to funding is still a major hurdle and infrastructure gaps persist, but the seeds of something special have been sown. African startups are attracting investment from across the globe and building businesses that are solving real problems. The question is, do you think Africa's startup ecosystem is better off now?